Before our lesson about Leah and Rachel, I want to say a few words about our overall aim. First, how did we come to be learning in this particular way, that is, remotely? It was not always thus, and it's not my first choice. To be in a room with friends exchanging insights from a sacred text is a great satisfaction and blessing, one I no longer take for granted. The adult Sunday school class I lead at Trinity had our last in-person meeting on March 8th. A dreadful virus has kept us apart since then. As I've heard it said, we would like to be through with the virus, but the virus is not through with us. So, as humans will, we adapt. We're all finding ways to stay connected, and Explore Sunday School class is no exception. Our church invited me to keep the flame of adult education lit by generating weekly videos to be posted on our church website. This I have done. Today's lesson is the 17th in our series. Turning to my process, I have chosen to align our subject matter with the Revised Common Lectionary with an emphasis on the Hebrew Testament, known to Christians as the Old Testament. The writings of the Hebrew Testament are the story of the Jewish people. They were taught to Jesus as a boy. I believe in context. I want to know the culture Jesus lived in, the stories that nurtured Jesus, the stories Jesus breathed and treasured and taught. What they say, how they fit together. I guess you could say I believe in biblical literacy, but not just for head knowledge, not to pass some kind of Bible quiz. I believe we are here to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as we love ourselves. To do that, we need to grow in wisdom and love, which doesn't just fall on our heads. People choose different disciplines to align themselves with God. One of mine is to explore the old stories, learning from them about the nature of God and the nature of humans, what God is aiming for, and how we can participate. To explore the stories, I use various translations of the Bible and various commentaries. To make the videos, I weave in music and images. In a sense, my sourcing is arbitrary. What appeals to my eye and seems to hold some promise of conveying the sense of the story to you. But it's my sense, and I dearly miss your feedback. I can only pray that I'm staying true to the truth God wants us to hear, and giving you some good food for thought, perhaps a smile or two. Though exploring the Bible may not interest some, you would not be here if it didn't interest you. For your company, I am profoundly grateful. If you're catching up, I invite you to go to our church website on your screen. On that page, you'll see links to our Explore video archives and to videos provided by the Hamaka Sunday School class. If you start with the first couple of Explore videos, you'll notice their visual quality is a little blurry. That's because I had to be taught how to make an iMovie into a large file. Who knew? Live and learn. I am fortunate as a teacher to have had good teachers, to be healthy so far, and free in all the ways that matter to pursue this passion of mine. You're with me now in the room where I do most of the work. As you can see, other work happens here too. I've found I can ride the elliptical and proof the videos on my computer and run the washing machine and dryer all in the same room, all at once. As a senior, sidelined for my own good, in a scary world of hurt, wanting to be constructive anyway, this is a convergence of blessings. Two things to notice: my high-tech hand weights and the empty ironing rack. An empty ironing rack could mean I'm looking well to the ways of my household, or it could mean t-shirts and stretchy pants. Week 17 in our series finds us in Upper Mesopotamia several thousand years ago. Back in Canaan, Jacob, son of Isaac, and Rebekah has perpetrated a gross deception, has stolen the birthright and blessing of the firstborn from Esau, his older brother. This is a big deal, and Esau is furious. So Jacob hastily heads north to the land of his mother Rebekah's people. No sooner does he arrive than he falls in love. Things get complicated, and before long he has not one, but two wives. This is our story today. Listen now to the words of chapter 29 of Genesis. Genesis chapter 29. And Jacob lifted his feet and went on to the land of the Easterners. And he saw, and look, there was a well in the field, and look, 3 flocks of sheep were lying beside it. For from that well they would water the flocks. And the stone was big on the mouth of the well. And when all the flocks were gathered there, they would roll the stone from the mouth of the well, and would water the sheep, and put back the stone in its place on the mouth of the well. And Jacob said to them, My brothers, where are you from? And they said, We are from Haran. And he said to them, Do you know Laban, son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said to them, Is he well? And they said, He is well, and look, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep. And he said, Look, the day is still long. It is not time to gather in the herd. Water the sheep and take them to graze. And they said, We cannot until all the flocks have gathered, and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well, and we water the sheep. He was still speaking with them when Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it happened, when Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that he stepped forward and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well, and watered the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel, and lifted his voice, and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kin, and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. And it happened, when Laban heard the report of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran toward him and embraced him and kissed him, and brought him to his house. And he recounted to Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, Indeed, you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him a month's time. And Laban said to Jacob, Because you are my kin, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger, Rachel. And Leah's eyes were tender, but Rachel was comely in features and comely to look at, and Jacob loved Rachel. And he said, I will serve 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And Laban said, Better I should give her to you than give her to another man. Stay with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed in his eyes but a few days in his love for her. And Jacob said to Laban, Give me my wife, for my time is done, and let me come to bed with her. And Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. And when evening came, he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Jacob, and he came to bed with her. And Laban gave Zilpah his slave girl to Leah his daughter as her slave girl. And when morning came, look, she was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? And why have you deceived me?" And Laban said, "It is not done thus in our place to give the younger girl before the firstborn. Finish out the bridal week of this one, and we shall give you the other as well, for the service you render me for still another 7 years." And so Jacob did. And when he finished out the bridal week of the one, he gave him Rachel his daughter as wife. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his slave girl, as her slave girl. And he came to bed with Rachel too, and indeed loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served him still another 7 years. And the Lord saw that Leah was despised, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and called his name Reuben. For she said, "Yes, the Lord has seen my suffering, for now my husband will love me." And she conceived again and bore a son, and she said, "Yes, the Lord has heard I was despised, and he has given me this one too." And she called his name Simeon. And she conceived again and bore a son, and she said, "This time at last my husband will join me, for I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore is his name called Levi." And she conceived again and bore a son, and she said, "This time I sing praise to the Lord." Therefore she called his name Judah. Fast forward to the High Renaissance, in particular the year 1545. In 1545, Michelangelo was working on a marble tomb for Pope Julius II. For this tomb he created a statue of Moses, who led the 12 tribes of Jacob out of Egypt. He wanted 2 figures to flank Moses, one on each side, and guess which 2 he chose? On Moses' right hand, Rachel. On Moses' left hand, Leah, matriarchs of the 12 tribes of Jacob. You probably already knew this. I didn't. What I also didn't know, but now do, is that Walmart sells a framed portrait of Rachel and Leah, print version of Michelangelo's statues. This portrait may be found in Walmart's college shop. $99, free shipping. My heart goes out to college students and those tasked with educating them. My heart goes out to all of us trying to be true to our callings. Beyond that, I hardly know what to say. But I do have some things to say about Genesis chapter 29. Some things I really, really do not want us to miss. Notice the well. In the Hebrew Testament, when you hear the word well, you know that marriage is in the air. When Eliezer arrives at the well at Haran, he prays that God will show him just the right wife for his master's son Isaac. No sooner does he pray this prayer than here comes Rebekah. Many years later, when Rebekah's son Jacob arrives at the well, here comes Rachel. Hundreds of years later, Moses arrives at a well, and here comes Zipporah. A well points to the water of new life springing from a marriage. Its depth points to the otherness of woman from man. Removing its protective covering is pretty obvious. Notice the stone. Jacob has just made an altar of stone at Bethel. Now he wrestles a large stone off the mouth of a well. Christians will make a connection to another stone rolled away from the mouth of a dark place. You'll notice that Laban ran to meet Jacob at the well. just as he ran to meet Eliezer at the well 40+ years ago. This time he didn't see any camels loaded with treasure. But he threw his arms around Jacob anyway. A shining example of hospitality, to be sure. Could he also have been hoping to find some hidden bags of gold? Alas, all Jacob brought was himself. But Jacob was, after all, his nephew, son of his sister Rebekah. So Laban took him in and put him to work. You surely notice that Laban is a loving father. If his language about his daughters, "You've married this one, now we'll give you that one," seems a little cavalier, if he seems to treat his girls like chess pieces on a board, at least he does right by them, holding marriage feasts, setting up their households. And when morning came, look, it was Leah. You'll notice that with regard to deception and trickery, Jacob has met his match in Uncle Laban. When Jacob confronts his uncle, it's pretty ironic that he would ask, "What is this thing you have done to me? Why have you deceived me?" Ironic considering what he did to his brother Esau and how he deceived his father Isaac. Of course, in both deceptions he was instructed and helped by his mother Rebekah, tricky sister of Uncle Laban. Pretty ironic, too, that Laban would say in answer, "Well, around here we provide for the firstborn first." We should remember that in the days of oral tradition, people loved hearing about tricksters. They loved it when someone less powerful or advantaged put something over on someone more powerful and more advantaged. Trickiness in that day was openly admired as a form of wisdom. But in this case, the trickery is poetic justice, pure and simple. Another angle on this is that Jacob was able to trick his blind father by touch. Isaac was suspicious because the voice he heard when he called for Esau sure sounded like Jacob's. But when he felt Jacob's fake hairy arms, he managed to push down his suspicions. Now we have ardent Jacob, love-struck, who's waited 7 years for his bridal chamber, and when he calls Rachel, and a voice that doesn't quite sound like Rachel replies, "I'm here, my husband," he goes with it. Ah, me. Another thing to note is that Jacob married both sisters in 1 week. The idea that he had to wait 14 years for Rachel is wrong. Finally, and most poignantly, we have favoritism again. Jacob's heart wants its own wild darling. But still, consider the heart of Leah. The younger sister, in a sense, has stolen the blessing of the firstborn. So the firstborn cries out to the Lord. The firstborn still enjoys the rights of wife, and she is fertile, whereas Rachel is barren, for now. I hope you've enjoyed exploring all these angles. One idea of exploring a Bible story is that each story has many little faces, facets, if you will, like a fine-cut diamond. There is light at the heart of the jewel, and it sheds different brilliance, different colors, as you turn it in your hand. Leah and Rachel wrestled with Jacob's favoritism, but as someone has said, they shared a common purpose: children for their husband. And their differences, though painful, were less important than their unity. So they cooperated. Could there be a lesson for us? So now we have 4 matriarchs, 4 mothers of Israel. Sarah, who birthed Isaac, Rebekah, who birthed Jacob, Leah and Rachel, who birthed the 12 tribes of Israel, which is to say, Leah birthed 6 Rachel, 2, and their slave girls, 4. Things were different back then.